A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came.
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio. Pastor Michael, it's time, that time of year where we kick off reading Restless. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm actually on vacation right now. No vacation from Restless, although we kind of are. We're recording a bunch so that we are on vacation from it, or I am anyway. So, officially starting the new year with a good, solid chunk of time on the road, and then a good, solid chunk of time in Florida with sun and beach and sand, and could not be more excited as a family to do that.
Yeah, that is so great. I'm so glad you're here. But Pastor Michael, we decided to once again announce reading Restless. Though, as we mentioned it, we are going to be doing it only for 7 books this year. And here's why. As they say, 92% of people who make some kind of resolution here in the Happy New Year, most of them are done by February. And most people beyond that, if you start a reading list, most people, you're quitting by book 7. You aren't keeping on going. And so we're embracing that with you. And so this year, Reading Restless only has 7 categories, and you might read other things.
Yeah, if you can, great. If you can do it, awesome. But we know, I mean, even for us, although I did read more than 12 books last year, I did not read all of them in the categories that we were supposed to. We have people that listen that did a far better job at reading Restless.
And so we are, we're very happy to do Reading Restless with you again. We've tried to add some different categories, and we are, so let's walk through some of these categories for people. We'll give some recommendations, and we'll come back through and talk about maybe what we have read. So our first category is a book in biblical theology. But yeah, Pastor Michael, there's 2 series that we can give recommendations from at least, but what would you say? Do you want to give people any ideas, any thoughts on this category?
Yeah, well, so I think the best place to start is go and pick up something from the New Studies in Biblical Theology series.
That's one of the series I was going to recommend.
Yeah, it's edited by D.A. Carson, and really a phenomenal series. One that I was really benefited from and have benefited from is currently called God's Unfaithful Wife, A Biblical Theology of Spiritual Adultery, by one Raymond Ortlund, by the way. I didn't even realize it was an Ortlund who did this until right now. But believe it or not, really great, phenomenal book. I'm pretty sure it had an older name that was much more provocative. I'm having AI find it for me because I want to know what it actually, because I have a copy that is a different name.
Interesting.
But that whole series, edited by D.A. Carson, it's a really phenomenal series. A lot of great work being done in there. And so, when we talk about biblical theology, one of the main things we're talking about is, tracing particular biblical themes or ideas, and laying them out how the Bible presents them. As opposed to last year, we did a systematic theology where you maybe go through, particular topics and, categorize them a little bit differently. And so this is just a helpful way to learn something a little bit deeper about Scripture. One of the ways it helps you is it begins to give you some of the, biblical categories to work with that you can trace throughout the Bible. And so that would be a great series to check in on if you want to do this with us.
Let me tell you, it might be one of the first ones from this series, but it is called A Clear and Present Word, which is on the clarity of Scripture or the perspicuity of Scripture. Back when I had a lot of questions and I was thinking through kind of the Reformation debates on, is Scripture clear enough for it to be interpreted? What does that mean? How do we understand that? I didn't read this because it was a work of biblical theology at the time, but it was an incredibly helpful book for me. I absolutely loved the book, and it's a book that I would happily come back to. Another good one that I've read from this is, again, right, what's interesting is if there's a theme that you're working through, right, that this series is become very large, so it probably has something on it. Last year, while we were preaching, or a while ago, when we were preaching through these sections of Mark where Jesus was touching lepers and there were kind of debates about holiness, I read the book Contagious Holiness from this series. And it's all about this idea of how Christ begins to give holiness, and how he can give holiness in ways that no one else can, and how interesting that is.
No, that's great. Hey, by the way, the original title of
you found it,
of the book that I'm talking about was Whoredom, God's Unfaithful Wife in Biblical Theology. They changed that one, but I prefer the old title, actually. Here's the thing: you go and read something. I'm sure they changed it because they literally changed it to God's Unfaithful Wife.
Okay.
But and I'm sure it was, well, this is offensive or something like that. Go read Ezekiel chapter 16, which a book like this deals heavily with. And you realize oh, this is dark stuff, right? You got to use harsh language when you're dealing with this. But it's also a theme that you can trace throughout the whole of Scripture. This idea of spiritual adultery shows up a lot. And so highly recommend checking that out. Or again, anything in this series is phenomenal.
Yeah. Let me give one more recommendation. One of the books in this series is called The Cross from a Distance. And it is a reading of Mark's gospel. And obviously when we were teaching Mark, I found it was a full of really interesting ideas. I didn't ultimately find everything he shared in it persuasive, but I loved it. If I were this year going to read something for this series, I would either read G.K. Beale's The Temple and the Church's Mission, because G.K. Beale is one of the he's one of the best well-known systematic theologians biblical theologians that we have today.
Right.
Or I would read, I think it's called Dominion and Dynasty, which is a theology, of the Hebrew Bible. So it walks through how do these themes of dynasty, dominion, what is this kind of growing thing happening in all of the Old Testament? Cool. And I've heard really good things about it, and it sounds very interesting to me. Let me give one other series recommendation here for biblical theology. Is Crossway put out a series called Short Studies in Biblical Theology. Yeah. So these are one sitting books. If you're sometimes the new studies in biblical theology, we should grant they get technical.
They are academic level, right? They're heavier and deeper, and they're not going to be a one sitting book.
Yep. And so back a long time ago, I ordered when they first started releasing the short studies in biblical theology, and they must have convinced me that they were done releasing these. And so I bought the complete set, and there are now twice as many as when I bought it that long ago. So they really got me. They got me there, everybody. But one that I think is a really interesting and good introduction, if this is something you're interested in, is James Hamilton Jr. He's a Southern Baptist theologian. He wrote one on work and our labor in the Lord. And so he traces through how work as it's built into creation, affected by the fall, how we can think of redeemed work, how we can think about its future. And I think it's one, it's so practical because you're thinking about work, something you always will be doing.
Great.
But two, he shows you a very straightforward way to begin understanding biblical theology, because he goes, creation, let's talk about work, the fall, right? Work, redeeming. And so I think it's a really good example. There are other examples in there. You can find things on the Lord's Supper, covenant, right? Other of those. But if you want something a little bit less academic, that might be one for you. All right, cool. Pastor Michael, what is our number 2 category?
Number 2 this year, if you're following Reading Restless, you're going to be reading a book about sports. So that leaves it open, right? It can be any sport, right? But you got to pick a book actually dealing with sports.
Yep. And if you are, if you've never read the book Moneyball, right?
Oh, I need to read that. I literally was going to say, Matt, give me a recommendation because I have no idea what I would read. But I love Moneyball. I love the movie. It's super fun. I like that movie a lot. So
it's a great, definitely a great book on sports. I mean, I will probably be reading a baseball book, as everyone knows. Baseball is life at this point. There's this great book by, not a well-known one, that I love. I wonder if he's released it into an audiobook. It's, what is it called? I want to give Ted Kluck the shout out he deserves, because I love this sports book as well. Let me find it. So Ted Kluck has, he's a great guy. He's a Christian. He's ghostwritten a number of the well-known sports biographies
for sports.
But no, his book Facing Tyson. So what he does is he traveled the country and he interviewed the men that fought Mike Tyson.
Cool.
And so you learn kind of how freaky. And so he does 15 of the boxers. Is this in an audiobook? Because even him reading it is one of the, for a while, he was reading sections of it. No, he has not released it as a full audiobook, which is too bad. But the stories are fascinating. So he introduces you to the guy. And if you don't know, by the end, you're going to know how long the guy lasted with Tyson, right? What happened. And it's a great book.
Dude, when you see someone like Tyson in his prime, I would like to actually read a boxing book because I'm intrigued by the boxing world, especially what it used to be. Mm-hmm. And when you see some of those older fights and you see just like that guy, I mean, number one, his neck is huge, right? Yeah. His neck is huge. And the force that he can hit with is so insane. Like the intensity of his fighting is so insane. It's so even hard to imagine while you're watching it. That would be cool.
Yeah, I love that book. I'm thinking about reading or maybe listening to, because by the way, for Reading Restless, you are allowed to listen. You are allowed to listen. We count it. To listen to Ball 4, which is one of the most well-known baseball biographies ever. If someone else knows of a better one, please let me know, because it is this one is, it's considered, it's a classic because a guy kind of tells the inside story of the Yankees, but because he literally just said everything that goes on in a baseball season, this book was hated for a while in it, because he would describe if Mickey Mantle was drinking or whatever before the game, right? Just like the kinds of things the Yankees were doing to win. And so a fascinating book, but Moneyball, Facing Tyson, if for a little bit off the beaten path one, both would be phenomenal books. Great. All right. A book you already own, and I am not at my house right now, so it is harder for me
Number 3. Well, I'm going to be reading for sure. So I have a small book club with men where we, are going through certain kinds of books. But the next book on the list for the end of January, so I'm actually going to be reading this sooner rather than later. But I'll also be reading other books I own throughout the year, I assume. But my plan is to read The Abolition of Man,
Ooh,
which
what a good one.
it'll be another read through. I've read it many times, but
What a good one.
we'll be rereading that one. I also hope to reread some Joseph Piper as well. Joseph Pieper, I should say, and some of his works throughout this year. So, and I mean, honestly, I have so many books that have been on my reading list. Literally in my office, I have a shelf that has the main books that I'd like to get to reading. And a lot of the ones that are on that shelf have been there for at least 2 years. Right. So we're at the point where I'm like, I have so many books that I need to read that I already own. Last year, I bought very few books, bought a handful of Ecclesiastes commentaries, maybe bought a few cool old books about Wisconsin and Wisconsin history or lore. But other than that, I've not bought a ton of books for myself unless I found a great deal on them, because I just have so many that I actually have to get to.
Yeah. We will always do this because we know who our audience is, and we know you're buying books that you aren't reading, and
you should.
And obviously you should read some of the books you've already bought, and so it will always be something. So that book that you're like, I've been needing, I should have read it. I just wish I was at my house so that I could mention the book that I'll be reading in it. But Pastor Michael gave you some from his library. If you own The Abolition of Man and haven't read it, you probably should start there. It's a great
definitely should.
So, category number 4, something from the American founding. Pastor Michael, what am I reading from the American founding this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly. There's so much that you could read. We just thought it'd be a fun kind of historical way to, get into the past, especially of American history. Hey, shout out to our many listeners who are not in America. Mm-hmm. You should still read some of this too. It will be good for everybody.
I mean, who's the guy that came and visited America during its founding? De Tocqueville, right?
Yep.
What's his book?
De Tocqueville. His would be, although it's really big, right? His writings about the American, like his travels around America in the early days it's pretty big. But you could still read that. That would be awesome. If you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. I might actually go to these because it's pretty easy to do. Reading the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers during that kind of age of debate during the founding. So I also might just read, a biography or something of somebody from that time and reading their writings as part of that. I haven't really decided on this one. I know I have a lot of books on my shelf that probably fit this particular lens, but I'm not sure yet what I would do. You could also, by the way, find a good, theologian or a good author, Christian author from the time, writing about their thoughts on the founding of the country, with lots of debate right now in the NAPARC world about Christians and politics and our nation and what we have to believe or can't believe or whatever. It might be good for you to go and read some of that. Read some of the writings from those who helped to revise the Westminster Standards on civil government. That's right around the same period of time. Just looking at some of the things that went into the understanding of the founding would be a helpful thing to do.
Yeah. So shout out to you, John Witherspoon. And
that's right.
I look forward to if you are one of those Presby characters, if you'd like to recommend something to me from the Presbyterian American founding, I certainly would be interested in it. All right, Pastor Michael, number 5. This will be a fun one.
This is
a dystopian novel. I think everyone is going to find out which one this is going to be for me. But Pastor Michael, do you have a dystopian novel you would like to read, or you strongly recommend if someone is looking for their recommendation?
Yeah, well, let me give my recommendations first, because I really don't know for sure what I'm going to be reading, because I'd like to read something that is new to me. Uh, I'm not sure yet. But if you haven't, I actually have on my bookshelf in our living room, I have a stack of dystopian novels because it's just fun, right? It's just a fun genre, I think. In my personal opinion, the greatest, the best dystopian novel, and it would be a good one to read because it's pretty quick, it's really fun, it's really well done, is Fahrenheit 451. This is a book that I think it should be mandatory reading for anybody that wants to understand the state of our culture. I think that more than any other, I think the others get things right, but I think more than any other, this is the book that gets right how our current cultural landscape came to be. And so highly recommend you go to that. It's also just a fun book, well written, really punchy and enjoyable. Also, C.S. Lewis has a dystopian novel called That Hideous Strength. And, I mentioned that I'm going to be reading The Abolition of Man. Well, That Hideous Strength in some ways is kind of like the fiction version of The Abolition of Man. It is really phenomenal. A lot of people get started on it and feel like it kind of starts off slow. And I think it's kind of meant to. But that too, I think, does a really good job, especially from the point of view of an academic, describing the nature of a kind of dystopia that actually exists a little bit right now, right? Some of the things, when you think about fake news stories or things like that, he writes about how that comes to be, right? How that happens, how people become the kinds of people that want to be in the right inner circles, that they're willing to do that sort of thing. Other than that, classics, Brave New World, 1984. I think both of those suffer from the kind of scientistic worldview that both of their authors had. They had a very mechanistic, materialistic worldview. And I think both of their works suffer because of that. But they're still interesting in themselves. They have definitely interesting things to say that I would recommend. On a personal level, I've heard a lot about a book called Mandibles, mostly from the Bitcoin world. And it has a lot to do with, the future of, currency and things like that. But I believe it's more of a dystopian book. I don't actually know. And so I'd like to work through that. And try to figure that out. If it actually is I don't know if it's technically a dystopian novel. I have to do more research. I just hear guys on podcasts talk about it, and so I'd like to check it out.
If you're with me, you want to read one with me, this is the year, everybody, that I read That Hideous Strength. I have not read it.
It's so good.
Everyone says it. Everyone wrongly says that it's C.S. Lewis's best novel. They are
wrong about that. Having now read, why am I blanking on the name?
Till We Have Faces.
Till We Have Faces. Having read that now, I don't think that you're in danger of reading That Hideous Strength and thinking it's better. It's definitely not.
And now that doesn't matter. Now that doesn't mean it can't be great.
It is amazing. It's amazing. It's one of the greatest, right? For sure, one of the greatest.
And I hope to enjoy it. Let me give two recommendations. I think that maybe, Pastor Michael, you probably have read these. Have you read The Road by Cormac McCarthy?
I've actually never read The Road. I should get it. I should have gotten it before this vacation, by the way, because last year I read Old Country, No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men, yeah.
And that was fun. And so I should have gotten that so that I could read The Road.
And the other one that I was actually just reminded of recently because of my wife's this repeated experience she has in public. So my family, right, we have 4 children with our 5th on the way. My wife gets stopped in public kind of all the time talking about our family and her children and how many kids she has. And people are surprised, sometimes happily surprised, sometimes like, don't you know where those come from or whatever? And what I've realized is we essentially live in a childless society.
Dude, I know
And
where
I'll
you're
just
going.
and I'll just say that like there is a certain demographic of the kind of person who stops my life with a lot of these comics, and it might be the people who the sociologist Francis Fukushima would have described the people who believe they are the last men on Earth. And so the book I'm recommending on this is the Children of Men, right, where a society literally stops being able to have children, and the incredibly strange ways that society begins to change.
Yes.
And with the worldwide birth rate collapsing, it just makes me wonder if I read it now, if some of the strange ways, the way it feels, like if that would feel like, if it would be insightful in that way.
Yeah.
It's a great book regardless, but I read it and saw the movie quite a long time ago. So, all right, what's our next category?
Number 6 is actually a specific book. So instead of doing a category of book, we chose one specific book for everybody to read. And that's because this was apparently Charlie Kirk's number 1 book recommendation. When he would recommend
a number of times. Yep.
He would say that this is the book that he wants everybody to read. And we thought that would be a fun way to pick a book. What was his number 1 recommendation? And it's the book Man's Search for Meaning. And it's Viktor Frankl, right? Is that that his name? So I've actually read this book, Matt.
Okay.
I have read this before, and it is really interesting. So that, basically the idea is it comes from a guy who lived through the Holocaust and talks about the nature of the kinds of things that he saw and kind of learned about human nature, and those who were able to carry on even in the worst possible situation, right? Like in the worst possible human suffering, who are the people that make it out of that and can still live and function and, and maybe even thrive, versus those who can't. And ultimately what he comes down to is it has to do with having a true source of meaning. Now, this is not a Christian book by any means. I think Viktor Frankl was basically a secular Jew. I don't even think he was that religious. I could be wrong about that. And so it's not a primarily like Christian work, but it does, I think, give a pretty important base of understanding, especially in a time of, total nihilism. I think this could be a really helpful thing to read, just in understanding, how to see some of these things about finding meaning in the world. And then as Christians, we can take it to the ultimate truth and say, hey, this guy actually doesn't go far enough. He doesn't know the truth enough, that actually there is a source of all true life and meaning and joy and purpose. And that can be found in Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. And so, we want to go further than this, but it is an enjoyable book, I think, a helpful book in many ways.
Yeah. And then we have, and so I do think that I look forward to reading that. And then we will be doing our last book. This is the category. Well, I read a book from the Western canon, but I didn't read the one that I planned on. But this year, once again, we are reading a book from the Western canon. Pastor Michael, this is something you should always do every year. This should be something that you're trying to do. But what?
Yeah, and you're engaging in the great conversation that's happened down through Western culture and history. It's a really good and important thing. I don't know yet what for sure I'll read. I know this doesn't technically count. I have begun to reread the book East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And I think we talked last year about how that's probably one of those books that would make it in there, or at least in our mind, as stupid as we are, as if we are good enough to like make a decision about what should be in the Western canon. We'll see if in the future, that's kind of an agreed upon societal move. But I am rereading that. I just picked that up pretty recently again, and we'll be reading it on my vacation. And so I'll be working through that. But otherwise, I'm not sure. I probably look for something a little more ancient again. It's been a little while since I've read any, Plato or Aristotle. That might be a good move, I think. I might take this book club that I have. I might take us through Aristotle's Politics, for instance, and so maybe go back to that. But anyway, so I'm really not certain. I would love to read some more Dostoevsky. I read, Notes from the Underground, which we talked about last year, probably pretty much every year, and so I might end up rereading that again too. But it'd be nice to read some more Dostoevsky again. So we'll see.
Yeah, again, this is always a good category, and again, there are so many ways to engage this, right? Like if this is where you have been behind and you haven't read Augustine, right? He is he is certainly part of this.
Read some Jane Austen, right? I've just talked with people, somewhat recently, who've been reading some Jane Austen, and reminded me, I haven't read Jane Austen in a long time, but man, some of her books, some of her novels are just fun and hilarious, and do a really good job at the dynamics between men and women.
Yep. But yes, this is where I failed to read the Iliad and the Odyssey this last time, and so I'm going to read. Maybe I'll read those, but I want to read something from this ancient time period. Though I don't know exactly what. I've heard some good things recently about Plutarch's lives. His reading some of his lives, where he's giving these kinds of biographies of ancient figures. Because I've just been listening to something about Alexander the Great. Everything. It's just so fascinating. And from what I understand, Plutarch, he's very willing, like most ancient historians, to like moralize, to be like, and this was a good, he makes them into moral lessons, which is at least interesting to me. But yeah, there's so many things. If you want to see probably what would be considered the most, and maybe I'll try and link it in the show notes. That's the nice way to do this, is the most complete list of like what is most widely considered the Western canon would be the great books of the Western world, which was, it was put together by like Mortimer Adler and the like literature department at the University of Chicago in the 1900s. And I don't know how many volumes it ended up. Let me look. They start with ancient writing, and it has up to 60 volumes, and it ends with, it gets pretty close to contemporary how far they got. They got to Animal Farm. So they're pretty close. Let's see if our book, our East of Eden, makes the list. If they agree with us. Oh no, tragedy. They did not agree with us. So a pretty good list. Not perfect.
It's an ongoing conversation. And I don't even know, by the way, if like Dostoevsky would necessarily fit here, as he's kind of the East, but like if you haven't read any Shakespeare, man, it's a good time to read Shakespeare. I saw a rendition of Macbeth this year. A woman from our church was starring in a rendition of Macbeth, and it was so good to remember how good Macbeth is as a story, just that all parts of it. And so if you haven't read any Shakespeare, man, go read some Shakespeare. Go read some of the good early American poets. That would be a great thing to be able to do this year.
So Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, Constitution, the Federalist Papers, unsurprisingly, and then John Stuart Mill's Liberty, Utilitarianism, and Considerations on Representative Government, which, other than the Federalist Papers and having read our founding documents, those are not.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the utilitarian philosophy that was alive and well in that day. But that is why we're here for you. We're here for you to read Restless. So there's still time for you, since we got 10 inches of snow, for you to be down in your basement while everyone else is sleeping and drinking eggnog, taking my recommendation, taking that eggnog and taking that brandy. There's still time for you to emerge this next spring holding Plutarch's Lives in one hand and your new small business you launched from your basement and your children that you're raising in the fear and the admonition of the Lord to take on the world. And so we're glad we get to read with you. We hope you read with us.
Yep.
Pastor
As
Michael,
you read, tag us in. I know we had quite a few people that would, post every once in a while, what they were reading for the different categories. So, tag us in it, and we'd love to share that around too.
and if you read all 7 of these categories this year, we will be doing at least a giveaway to someone who reads in all 7 of these categories. And so
If we remember,
if we remember.
remind us, remind us later of all the things we've promised.
And we're not saying first person to finish. I don't want to hear like, hey man, I had a long road trip. I put on 7 audiobooks. I'm done. What's my prize? Like, you can do that, but we are going to wait for everyone. We're going to give everyone a little bit of time to work on these and give an award. If you want to join us for the Patreon, you can always sign up. We love doing the show. We hope to catch you guys. We hope it's enjoyable when Dumb Restless releases later this fall, when we have 2 new co-hosts try the show. But we'll be with you then.